These tools.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you coming out of Canada, Malumir Logan, and she is a intersectional polymath, which is quite interesting. We'll find out more about what that is with an entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm really delighted to have her on the show and talk about her journey, her experiences, and provide value to the listeners. Malumir, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Christopher. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So just talk about what is your journey, what is an intersectional polymath, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, by intersectional, what I mean by that is in reference to my identity and how I navigate the world. What I mean by that is that I am someone who is ambiguously racialized. I am a woman. I have multiple neurodivergence and I'm living with physical disability. So, when you add on all of these intersecting identities, it means that the way I really pick up on, I'm very interested in the ways that people interact with the world. Because for folks like myself, we often, our experience of the world will be very different from someone who has fewer of those intersecting identities.
Mhm.
As for the polymath reference, that gets at the idea that I have broadly varied interests. I always have anything that I've decided I want to pick up and learn. I've been able to. So it means that I in my how that's translated in my career is that my career in itself is very multidimensional and my interests are very multidimensional. But yes, it really means that I've always been able to take on anything that I wanted to learn and just be able to run with it.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Sometimes to my husband's chagrin, I will say.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's really interesting is with your bio, you have a lot of things that are just of quite interesting, I would say contrarian. And first question I have is you say resilience is a myth. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that the way that resilience is used and spoken of in our common parlance is being mythologized in a way that is quite damaging. And so, what do I mean by that? Across the globe, the corporate environments are spending billions and billions of dollars on wellness programs, which is great. We need them. Wellness programs are very important. And part of that programming is resiliency programming. The only issue is that it's not actually working. I think it's something 42 or 43% of workers globally are burnt out. That's a problem. We all know that burnout leads to very real problematic medical and mental health and other issues, including long term issues. And the reason that the way that resiliency plays into this is that we're frequently told you need to do more self-care. You don't just take a vacation or make yourself a nice bubble bath. And you just need to keep punching above your weight and be small but mighty. All these ideas that get at the idea that you, as the worker, you need to be more resilient. But this is actually something I've done some research on. I have a lot of interest in this, and I teach leadership at the master level at a university. So this topic is something I have a lot of interest in, and there is actually research that shows that, and when you look at the World Health Organization, how they determine what burnout is, it refers to the idea of chronic workplace stress that has not been effectively managed. That question on the managed is where there's often misunderstanding, because the idea of managed, it thinks of you as the worker, you're not taking enough bubble baths, right? You're just not having enough grit. Meanwhile, the work on this actually shows, and there are research think tanks that are doing work on this, that actually managed, that's a management problem. It's actually about leadership. And yes, of course, you need to take care of yourself, but as the worker, you're not actually the one in charge of your workload, of frequently of work environment, of these other factors that lead into how you are able to maintain or not maintain your well-being and health. And so burnout is in fact a management problem, because it comes down to the decisions that leaders make. And so coming back to the idea that resilience is a myth, it's the way that it's used, that currently it is being, I believe that resilience is being slapped onto people like a band-aid for a gaping wound when what they actually need are stitches and a lot of physical rehabilitation.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I just like I said, I was talking with another guest and we were just talking about burnout and just like this they like the corporate I haven't need I haven't but there's they say the same things, the platitudes over and over, the same thing, but it's like just this for your ears, but it like nothing ever gets done. So it's just
Yes.
interesting to hear from your perspective. The next question I have is you call yourself a anti-oppressive leader. What does that mean and what does that look like and feel like in real life?
Yeah, I think that's an insightful question. I wish more people would think about that in their own lives as leaders. So to back up first on the definition of anti-oppressive leader, I'm actually going to start with leader because I believe that first of all, every single one of us is a leader, regardless of whether you're in a formal leadership capacity or not. I say that because we're each the leader of our own life, right? I'm the one making decisions for my life. And even though external factors may come that I don't have any say over, it's not so different when you're a formal leader either. And I'm still the one who has to make the decisions and navigate and drive my own life. So every one of us is a leader. But when it comes to formal leadership roles, that means we actually have authority over other people. It is meant to be in the workplace. And the reality also is that any leader in any capacity has disproportionate impact on the people reporting to them. And that means that even though they may just be one person, they have so much impact on that person's life. We can all think of a time that we've had a great boss. And I'm sure we can all think of a time we've had a very challenging boss and how that affected us outside of work. And so, as a leader, I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm having an impact on the people who report to me. I am the one who is creating the environment, and I am the one who can make or break aspects of that person's career. And I'm aware of that. The thing is that a lot of leaders don't even want to think about that. They get very uncomfortable when they start thinking about power. And really, that's what we're talking about.
Mm,
So when it comes to anti an anti-oppressive lens that I apply to my leadership, what it means is that I am aware of the fact that as a formal leader, I have power. And I have to accept that. Now, power is not good. It's not bad. It's neutral. It's how you use it, right? It's like anything else, right? The metaphor of the scalpel, right? A knife can be used to save someone, can be used to damage someone. It's the same thing with power. It is exactly the same. And the power is there whether or not you are using it as a leader. And I talked earlier about having intersectional identity. And the reality is that my experience of the world has been very different from, say, colleagues of mine who are not racialized or who are males. And I don't have anything against them for that. It just is. My reality is just different. The number of times I've found myself as the one and only at a table, for example, the only woman at a leadership table, or the only racialized woman at a leadership table or in a discussion, and so on and so forth. And as much as I really wish and dream of the world becoming a meritocracy, there are systems in place. And even if no one is purposefully trying to perpetuate them, the reality is these systemic serrated edges exist for us, for many of us. And so I'm just aware of that as a leader. I don't want to ignore the fact that those systemic realities exist. And I'm also aware that the role that I play means that I have power, I could unintentionally harm someone, or I could intentionally help someone. And so I'm very cognizant of that. And I am constantly working to learn and confront my own self. Because even though I have my own lived experience,
mm,
it doesn't mean I haven't absorbed some of society's ideas by accident, as we all do. That's exactly how systems work. We grow up and we absorb. And so I'm just cognizant of that. And I actively work to make sure that I am neither purposefully nor unintentionally causing harm in my leadership. And that not only am I not causing harm, but that I'm also creating a lot of good. And it has been very effective, by the way. It's meant that I've led highly effective, collaborative, high performing, high delivering teams who loved working for me. They both liked me and respected me. And for anyone who's been in a leadership role, you'll know that is a very difficult outcome to achieve. And so it does work.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, we've all had the stories of just horrible bosses and just more power to go out and do your own thing and start your own company and work for yourself. The next question I have for you is this idea. So you talk about building strategic thinking as a skill, and you say strategy isn't innate but learned. What practical steps can individuals take to develop strategic thinking in their careers? This is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to back up for just one moment, the piece on being an anti-oppressive leader, I created that kind of leadership in existing corporate structures. Just to be clear, it wasn't I wasn't consulting in them. I was providing leadership within large organizational structures, which actually was a nuance, made it more challenging because if you're a tree in a forest, then
Mm,
together you're creating a canopy and you can create a lovely environment below you for all the flora and fauna to develop. If you're a tree on a beach, it could be a little bit more difficult. You don't have as much mutual support and you're subject to all the weather. Yes. So I just wanted to be clear that I believe that anti-oppressive leadership can be delivered anywhere. In terms of the question about strategy, yes, strategic thinking, I think maybe some people naturally have it, but really it's just a skill. And what is it a skill of? It's a skill of learning how to notice all of the pieces of prudent information that your mind is already picking up on.
mm,
So our brains are super processors. They process incredibly quickly, huge, unthinkable quantities of information. And our brains are more powerful than any AI. And we're picking up on so much. Now, that's a lot of noise, and we can't possibly pay attention to all of it. Of course, this is why we have automatic processing, which is great and important. But we have often unlearned how to pay attention to the important things, right? You notice how little kids are really curious and they ask a lot of questions. And sometimes it's like, why you ask? I don't know what the answers to that. But there's actually a lot of wisdom in that because they're noticing something they have a question about, something that is prompting curiosity and recognizing it and seeking more. And so in our professional endeavors, we can actually learn to think more strategically. And in order to notice the strategic opportunities, we have to learn how to pay attention to those little bits of information. And actually, I have an exercise that I usually suggest to people in order to hone that skill. It doesn't sound like it's related to strategic thinking. If you go pick up a strategic thinking book, you're not going to find this. But I'm talking about neurologically speaking, this will help you and you will notice the difference if you stick with it for a few weeks at least. So the exercise is you set your timer, you get a pad of paper and a pen, or you get out your laptop or dictation app, whatever you use to do any kind of writing. You
uh-huh.
set your timer for 5 minutes and you just start writing.
Mm,
And that sounds, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to write about? Oh, and I teach this to the students in the leadership course. And frequently at the start, some people are looking at me wide-eyed, thinking, what am I going to write about? I don't understand what I'm supposed to. And so what I'll say is just start. You can start with, I don't know what the heck this silly exercise is. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But this person is telling me to write for 5 minutes. So here I go. I'm just writing for 5. And just go with it. Just write non-stop for 5 minutes. And you're going to do this every day, just 5 minutes, right? We do all have 5 minutes. I know lots of us are we have incredibly demanding, unrelenting schedules, but this is an important 5 minutes to create. You do this every day for 5 minutes. I promise you, this is what's going to happen. As the days go on, you'll start because basically you're training your brain to pick up on all the information that's right below the surface, right? There's so much noise up at the top. There's
mm,
so much noise in our world. You're teaching your brain to weed through that noise, get to the thing that's really bugging you underneath the surface, right? And then what you'll find, you'll probably notice that you're going to start writing about something, say in your workday, that wasn't quite sitting right, or there's just something there and you don't know what it is, but you'll start to notice that there was something that you were writing about that topic. And then as you keep up with this week after week, you'll start to notice you're picking up on, aha, that's the thing that's bothering me. That's where the opportunity is. No one's talking about this thing. Wait, that person mentioned this. That means that we have an opportunity over here. If you stick with it for like week after week, you will start to notice this. I promise it works. And you will, therefore, you will be able to be a much more strategic thinker and decision maker and advisor.
I really love that because it reminds me, just because you mentioned just sitting down and just 5, 10 minutes, just quieting your mind almost, or even making that time for quiet introspection, also exercise, but this idea of strategic thinking and just paying attention to what's going on in the world, like just what's happening to our healthcare, like education, what's going on. Just be curious and start to plan and start to see the world and plan and think and strategize, which I really love what you are doing. Um, the next question I have for you, because you have so many interesting terminology, and you said you're and you say you're ambiguously racialized. What do you mean by that, and how has that affected your career?
Yes, exactly, exactly. So ambiguously racialized means that people look at me and the fact is, first of all,
Uh-huh.
race, there is only one human race. There's only one human race, right? Scientifically. However, we as humans love to put things into boxes. We categorize, and that's the way the world works. And
Um,
so we put ourselves and each other into boxes. The thing is that people look at me and white is the norm, but they can immediately tell that I'm not white, but they don't know what I am. I cannot tell you how many times growing up and as an adult, I have been asked, what are you? Now, these days, if someone asked me what I am, I would say I am a highly competent, wise, caring, and passionate individual. What are you? But growing up, I understood what they were asking and had so much internalized racism myself that I would just answer the question. So, what it means is that people don't know what I am because I am mixed and people can't tell and they can tell that I'm other. And the way that has affected my career is simply that I have been seen as other in an unconscious way. So again, even people don't have to, a lot of people believe that, oh, I'm not racist. Like I want to think I'm not racist. But the fact is, I grew up in society just like everybody else. And I will have unconscious beliefs that I don't even intend to have absorbed that are somewhere in the back of my mind informing my beliefs and attitudes. Now, some of us have worked really hard on making sure that we're not unfairly applying beliefs and values to people, but a lot of people haven't done that. And a lot of people just, and it's not that they're bad people, it's just that they walk through the world with a lot going for them and not realizing they have a lot going for them. And again, I mentioned earlier, there have been many times I've been the one and only at a table, the only female at a leadership table, and also the only racialized woman at a table. Often, what it's meant specifically in a day to day kind of way is that I, as a woman, and especially a woman of color, means that I will have had to work harder and produce more and be a higher performer for my work to be seen, to even be acknowledged. And again, it's not that anyone intends that, but unless people are being really cognizant and really questioning themselves and really asking themselves how they're engaging with the world, that is what has happened. Or, for example, if I say something and this is how I speak, this is just how I talk, this is how I speak in corporate settings, and I will speak like this, and someone will perceive me as being confrontational and aggressive, even though I'm not being confrontational or aggressive. I'm simply speaking. Whereas I have been in many meetings where, say, a very capable but animated white male starts yelling in a meeting, literally yelling, arms flailing, and can get away with it and is seen as passionate. So this is nothing against white men, of course, but it's just this is how my lived experience has gone, where being in my body has often meant that my work has been minimized or undermined, even if there were no, even if I was in an environment where no one said anything explicit to me, even if there were no subtle acts of exclusion or microaggressions per se, just the assumption that that anything that I've done is automatically minimized or lessened just because I'm in my body. That's how it's affected me and how it affects basically all women of color in particular, but also people of color.
Mm. Yeah. And anyone who is like the non-white male kind of category is just, I've experienced that too. And this idea of neurodivergent, where it's just introverted or you're just different and just thinking, it's just, but it's really interesting. And so one thing is, I know we have a couple more minutes, and what I really am fascinated by your views. And just one thing is, how is your background as a Reiki master? And I'm not sure what a tarot creatrix is, but how does that contribute to your approach to leadership and personal growth?
Absolutely. That, yeah, I so appreciate that question. In my career, as I mentioned earlier, I do lots of different things. So I've got a lot of experience with the hard skills and the soft skills. I also have formal teaching experience, as I mentioned, at university, and I love that. And then separate to all that, I am also a very spiritual person. So as much as I love the science, I as much love the spirituality.
Mhm.
And what a Reiki master is. So Reiki is a particular modality of energy work. And actually, the reason I first got into it is that it was for one of our cats, actually, because one of our cats had died very suddenly of renal failure. But she had a sister, and that sister had never known life without her sister cat. And I was actually very worried. Oh no, is this cat now going to end up developing health problems herself? Is she going to get depressed? Is something going to happen? So I
Mhm.
wanted to find something to comfort her. And I came across this Reiki thing, and someone told me about Reiki. And I thought, you know what, let's give it a try. And then the cat was obsessed with it. Now, so this is why I'm like, you know what, I think there is so much more to this world than meets the eye, because it looks like I'm just holding my hands over her, but she would demand it. That I would get home from work and she would come up and she'd be meowing and demanding, and she never did that. And then I would do the Reiki on her. And then as soon as I would done, then she would go on her merry way and go sleep somewhere. It's an energy modality. The
Uh-huh.
idea is that it's very gentle energy. And tarot creatrix, tarot cards. Are you familiar with tarot cards? You might have seen them in movies or TV, where
Yes.
they use them usually to predict the future. So tarot cards are they're quite popular these days, and they're not only used for predicting the future. They're often also used for self-reflection and journaling and that kind of thing. I actually love using them for both. And I've actually created two tarot decks because I believe in the system and structure of tarot so much. At a high level, it's a deck of 78 cards, and each card, it has a piece of art on it.
Uh-huh.
And it is a very specific system. And each card, it's almost like it's its own encyclopedia or book of wisdom. And I love that. And I love seeing the connections and the ideas. And I think that there's so much capacity within that system for people to find moments of insight or aha moments, and anything that can help people these days. The world needs more of that. And so, how that then relates to my leadership is that none of us is just here to produce. We're not just cogs and wheels. It is so important for us to be able to connect with our full selves. And so much of the work that we as leaders do these days is lead in immense uncertainty. And the thing is about the uncertainty is that we're uncertain too. We don't even know all the answers ourselves. We don't know where things are going to go. We have a little more expertise, we have a little more experience, but we're all trying to lead ourselves and each other through immense uncertainty. And how can we do that? And I love what you mentioned earlier about taking time to reflect, and or meditation or introspection, or whatever people prefer. I believe that, at least for me, spiritual practice allows me to remain fully connected with myself. It keeps me grounded. And it also reminds me that there is a wider world out there, that it's not just about the latest challenge that we're having in the workplace, that there is a wider world out there, and it keeps me connected to myself and to that world.
Really fascinating, because I'm very spiritual myself. And I had another podcast guest. We were just talking about the spirituality of money, and just because my background is very scientific, medical, very
Yeah,
analytical, but I'm always using like intuition and kind of my guides and just signs
absolutely.
to make decisions. And
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation. How can people find out more about you? And you really have some very interesting thoughts and ideas around leadership and just fitting in and contributing. And so, how can people find you and follow you, reach out to you, and connect with you?
Absolutely. I have a blog, acornandburdock.ca, because Canada, and I've got hundreds of posts there on all of these topics, actually, including leadership, but also on LinkedIn. I'm the only Malumir Logan on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Really keep up the great work and really insightful ideas. I really learned a lot from talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a lovely conversation.